Good afternoon, everyone who's on the West Coast, and good morning to those of you who are joining us in Japan and Asia. This is the last session in our spring quarter series on entrepreneurship and Asian high-tech industries. I'm delighted to be able to talk about the topic of how AI is changing the content creation business in things like anime and game development, especially in the startup ecosystem in Japan. Before I do, I've got a couple of business announcements. So remember, if you're a student in this class, the final comment, all of your work is due by the scheduled exam time of this course. And you can find that on the syllabus. I'll be a little bit flexible, but I have to turn in the grades for graduating seniors on June 12th, and I will need a day or so to read your work before you turn it in. So please turn it in no later than the scheduled exam time for the course, if it's at all possible. Let me know if you need an incomplete. The second thing about this is that you should have the online course evaluations. These are very important to us. We really want to hear your opinions and how we can make this course better in the future. So please be sure to send in the evaluations. Remember, those are specific to me, to my instruction. And yes, I am responsible for putting together the schedule of the speakers this quarter. So for our speakers today, we have two people who are joining us live from Japan. First of all, Raven Gao is the founder of PixAI, which is an anime character generation site that over 2 million people a month are using. He's also the CEO of the company that is commercializing this, named Mewtant, Mewtant. And he was previously the CEO of a Singapore-based startup, and he's a graduate of Columbia University. Raven, good morning. I'm glad you could join us.
Yep, thank you for having me today, Dr. Dasha.
You're very welcome. Also joining us from Japan is Yoyo Yang, who is on the investor side. Yoyo got her PhD from Waseda University in Japan, and she first started out with a strategic venture capital and business development role for a large Japanese company, and that was, she was based in Hong Kong. Then she moved over to Tokyo and served as a partner success manager for Plug and Play. And she also did venture capital investment for a major game maker in Japan. I think I can say the name, Bandai Namco. And most recently, she became a regular VC with Founders Fund in, Makers Fund in Japan. Yo-Yo, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Ganesh.
Great, thank you. And with us here in the auditorium, is Shiho Watabe, and it's always a pleasure to welcome Shiho back. Shiho has spoken in our programs a number of times. She got her master's at Stanford and then first started out as an investment banker with Morgan Stanley in Tokyo, and then moved over to this company. At the time, it was not that big. It was called Google. And she had a series of roles at Google, first in Tokyo, then in London, and most recently here in Mountain View, where she was working on the marketing side. Then she became senior marketing director for a Japanese company that started out as a startup and became a public company, Moderator. And she has helped a number of startup companies since then in marketing and business development. Most recently, she moved back to the place that is her family home, which is Shibuya City inside Tokyo. And Shibuya had a program to attract foreign entrepreneurs called Shibuya Startup Support. Shiho was an advisor to that program. And when it spun out of the city government and became a for-profit company, she was first CEO of that company, and now she holds the chairperson role for Shibuya Startup AK. Shiho, I gotta ask, because Shibuya, you helped me put together this program today. What was it about Raven and Yoyo that you wanted to feature?
Sure. So content startup, it's such a big focus for the Japanese government. And Raven obviously is one of the best entrepreneurs I've ever met in my career. So I was looking for an opportunity to sort of join him on the stage at some place in the future. And this was a perfect opportunity. And Yoyo, I think we met via DM, like she DM'd me about 3 years ago, and that's how we met. And she was a natural fit. She knew everything about Japanese entertainment, and she's lived in Japan for a long time. And we connected immediately over our love for anime and entertainment and startups. So this is really my dream, and I'm really honored to share the stage with those of you.
I'm delighted. Thank you, Shiho, and thanks so much for inviting them to come. Raven, if you would, tell us a little bit more about PixAI and about Mewtant. Raven, the
Sorry,
floor.
that's a question for me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, PixAI at the very beginning was actually started in Singapore in 2022, initially as a hobby project. So back then, I was actually sort of like exploring new opportunities, and I was sort of like doing Dungeon Master for a D&D campaign, which stands for Dungeon and Dragon, which many of you sitting out there should be quite familiar with. So my players had a request for me, which was to ask me to use AI to make some anime style avatars for them. Back then, it was impossible to do it using both the closed source and open source models. So we ended up sort of like fine tuning our own AI models for anime style image generation. And that was quite well received among the player community of the D&D campaigns that I hosted. So we eventually decided to turn it into a commercial project. That's how we started Mewtant. And we were onboarded from Singapore to Japan by the Shibuya startup support system in, I think, late 2023, thanks to the help of Shiho. So that's a very high level, brief introduction of what we do. Yeah.
Well, that's great. So in 2022, when you first started this, that was before the release of Gen AI, right? Before of ChatGPT. Were you already working with generative AI, or was it a different approach to deep learning?
Well, it's a very good question. So back then, apparently, the buzzword generative AI was not yet coined, right? So, but when we talk about generative AI, it could cover, I mean, a great range of concepts. I would say it includes mainly, Gaussian splats, autoregressive models, which usually refer to the LLMs, and diffusion models. So what we worked on back then was the diffusion model. So I think the diffusion models actually emerged a little bit earlier than the well, I mean, it didn't emerge earlier. Sorry, a correction to that. It became sort of like useful a little bit earlier than the autoregressive models. So we actually launched this service exactly 1 month before ChatGPT. So back then we didn't call it generative AI. We just called this sort of like AI vibe generator or something.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get into this? What made you think of using AI to generate anime characters?
Well, so I've always been a big fan of anime since I was a kid. I was raised in Australia and I went to the US for college. And so anime has been a very important part of my life. I started watching anime since I was 5. And I think I was also in the anime club when I was a student at Columbia. And I think I was pretty sure that I'm gonna work on my own startup since I was very young, partially because of my family root, but I didn't really have like a clear direction until I was like a college junior when I actually had some personal experience in playing some online games. And I think those experiences were like very shaping for me personally. And as a result, uh, I made up my mind that I'm gonna sort of like start working on something that could connect the virtual world and the physical world as soon as I graduate. And that's how I started my journey as an entrepreneur.
Okay, so I got one more question for you before we go to Yo-Yo, and that is, what was it about Shibuya startup that attracted you to go to Tokyo? Are you still in Tokyo, or have you gone back to Singapore?
I'm still in Tokyo, so I initially sort of like started my entrepreneurship visa in Tokyo in late 2023, and I officially moved my family from Singapore to Tokyo actually late last year, which was October 2025. I think what really attracted me was the I would say the connection to the IP and content industry in Japan, because what we are working on is the intersection of content, entertainment, and AI, right? So there comes a question: uh, does AI come first, or does content come first? I didn't have a clear answer to that until like mid 2025 when I had a chat with a senior executive from Sony, which is one of our strategic investors.
Mhm.
So they managed to convince me that if you are serious about building anime, you can only build it in Japan. If you think AI is more important, you should move to the Bay Area, the Silicon Valley. So I had like an internal debate with myself whether anime is the primary focus here or AI. I think I ended up choosing anime. So that's why I moved my family to Tokyo with me.
Okay, thanks. Yo-Yo, from the investor side of the table, how did media and content industries or this kind of whole area fit into the strategic corporate venture capital investments you were making for these companies?
Uh, yeah, that's I think it's very broad questions.
Yeah, it
From my
is.
side, yeah, I can also give some background, like the introduction of the things I'm
Okay,
doing right now.
great.
I'm doing the investment at the Makers Fund. So Makers Fund is one of the few, I think, venture capital focused on the game and the interactive entertainment. I think back to 2018, at that time, it's like not so many people actually in the world have invested in games because, from your VC's point of view, like investing in a game is it's like much more high risk. It's like a high risk, and also it's difficult to invest because you are investing creativity, and also you are investing like the people who are making the most innovative like games, and also you have to um, make your judgment based on like their both their creativity and also the way they are thinking about like entertainment. So I think that is something like I have been done like for years. Also like in Japan, one of the I think you can say like most creative like the hubs like in the world. Um, from like before I works in Makers Fund, I actually have done like investment from like a strategy, which is from a strategic like investment background at Bandai Namco you just mentioned. I think that is a different angle to investing in games and also interactive entertainment from a corporate, especially a Japan corporate. I can, dig into more about this, but to be honest, I think these are the different. For me, it's like two different roles. Even we are investing in the same people, but the way of you're thinking about like the talent and also the peoples in the regions for you to invest is kind of different.
Yeah, okay. So if I can ask, from the outset, you were always interested in the kind of game and content creation, or did that just sort of happen as after you started investing first?
I think uh, if it's like mentioning more about like my personal thoughts, like I started to look into like game and interactive entertainment even since I'm a kid. So it's the story is similar to Raven. Like we are Asian kids, like we are otaku. So I have been knowing the games and also the animes for a long, long time. But if you mention about like the investment, to be honest, I was also one of the people that I think maybe game and entertainment is not a things to invest. So I started the investment in hard tech, like more like for example, like AR, VR, and also robotics. When I started like the working as an investor, but then there is a good. I think when I actually moved back to Japan, I just realized like the entertainment and also the content industry in Japan is actually the already become like the one of the biggest industry in Japan, and it's actually can invest. So I think I kind of like finally combine my personal hobby and with my professional job together, and I think this is maybe one of the most like the happiest things I have been done like in my life. I'm still very happy I'm doing this.
Well, that's cool. That's great. Thank you. We'll come back and talk some more about all of this in just a minute. Shiho, I think you actually have a few slides, right?
Yes.
Why don't I let you give your comments?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today again. And this is truly a full circle moment because my graduating thesis back in '06 was about Asian IP, like Japan, Korea, China, soft power. So this is like truly like a full circle moment speaking on this topic. So thank you for having me back on campus. Hi again, I'm Shiho. I'm a chair of Shibuya Startups KK, a startup acceleration program called UP. We're a private entity established in 2023 with Shibuya City.
Can I stop you for a second? Can people back in the back of the room hear okay?
No.
I kind of sort of suspected. I've sat back there. I know what it's like. You need to speak up more.
Okay. That's better.
A little louder.
Sorry, I'm heavily jet lagged, so probably like I'm low energy, but I'll work towards a bigger volume. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, cool. So I'm so excited to be on this panel today with Raven and Yoyo, and I'm looking forward to really learning from those two. Yeah, so this is a little bit about who I am. So to give you a little bit of more context of me, but I think Dr. Dasher covered most of these. So I'll go really fast, but I grew up literally in Shibuya City. And I grew up specifically in this part of town called Harajuku. And it is like pop culture central. And I came to Stanford for my master's in '04. When I graduated, Wall Street was calling louder. So I joined Morgan Stanley and I started my career as a young investment banker. And I transitioned to Google just 6 months before we talked if anyone wouldn't remember how that was like. And lucky timing in hindsight. And I spent close to a decade at Google. And after that, I joined Macquarie. And Macquarie now is a big public company, but it was Japanese unicorn back then. You hear me okay? All right.
Kind of tough.
Okay.
You really do have to speak out and a little slower than usual.
Okay.
And for Raven and Yo-Yo also, same for you. Make sure you're a little slower and louder than usual.
Okay. So should I do it all over again or? Okay. So yeah, I'll go back and after close to a decade at Google, I joined Macquarie. And it was a Japanese unicorn back then, and it was expanding to the US. And I got to be a part of this, like launching the business for the US market, doing Super Bowl TV ads, all the way to the IPO. And then after the IPO of Macquarie, I moved towards more early stage experiences, including an AI ed tech startup called Elsa Speak, which was founded by a Stanford founder, backed by Google. And then 2020, COVID hit. And then I moved back to Japan and met the mayor of Shibuya. And it changed everything. I moved back to Japan after more than a decade and started Shibuya Startups KK with Shibuya City. So what is Shibuya Startups KK? Simply put, we help world-class founders enter Japan. Our mission is to build a global startup ecosystem in Tokyo. We're stage agnostic, accepting applications from around the world on a rolling basis. Our investors include Shibuya City and some of the largest corporations based in Shibuya, including Tokyo Corporation, Tokyo Land, GMO, and Cyber Agent. Our business has two main pillars, a startup program called UP, and then corporate consulting. Startup program helps global founders enter Japan by assisting in areas like startup visa, operating bank accounts, finding legal and accounting support in English, and overall go-to-market strategy and execution. And then we have a consulting division that helps local governments and corporations. Since 2023, we've supported 63 startups from US, Asia, Europe, and Middle East and Oceania. Around half have female co-founders. Age and gender-wise, our founders are pretty diverse. Our focus areas include care economy, fundamental creator economy, and physical AI and hardware. We have a range, but we would like to support anything that enriches the lives of people who live in Shibuya. So this is pretty dense, this slide, but why should you build in Japan now? So from an ecosystem builder's point of view, a few data points to pay attention to. First, Japan is the oldest developed country in the world, with 1/3 of the population over 65. We're leading the world in this one problem area, aging of the society. 5 of the top 10 highest grossing media franchises are from Japan. This list includes Pokemon, Hello Kitty. Of course, Japan's IP dominates the world. Japanese VTubers account for 70% of total global viewing hours. By 2033, the VTuber market will reach $14 billion. Japan built this new industry from scratch over just a decade. And of course, Japan is big on gaming too. The Japanese gamers spend more money on games, roughly more than 5 times the Asia Pacific average. Japan is a home to gaming IPs like Nintendo, Sony, Capcom, Sega, and of course Bandai Namco. Japan is competitive and deep tech too. Hardware combined with physical AI is worth paying attention to. Also, with the weak yen, there is a window for investment in manufacturing right now. From a market perspective, Japan is a huge economy, but it is less crowded with startups compared to the United States or China. Japan also has abundance of capital. The government has set a $65 to $70 billion investment target by 2027, and hundreds of VCs and CVCs are chasing limited deal flow. So this gap presents huge opportunity here. Lastly, beyond the numbers, the founders who joined us in Shibuya mentioned that other motivations, including the quality of life, safety, highly educated talents, lowest unemployment rate among the developed countries, world-class public infra like healthcare to transportation, and the food. So yes, Japan is a highly functional home for global innovation. So Japan is a blue ocean, still the world's 4th largest economy, falling to the 5th next year perhaps. Underserved, hard to tackle from outside, and deeply hungry for global innovation. That's why we built this company with Shibuya City to bridge the gap in the market. And that's why I believe AI-driven media startups have a unique, powerful home in Japan right now. Yeah.
Okay, great. You can stop sharing. Yeah, thanks to everybody. So I kind of first want to ask how you see the startup ecosystem in Japan. And I'd like to ask all of our panelists. Raven, Yoyo, Raven, you go first. What surprised you about, was there anything that surprised you about moving to Japan in regard to how the startup ecosystem for media and content creation is?
Well, I think there are apparently a lot of things that surprised me when I moved here, right? But if I have to name one thing, I think it's actually the cost of talent acquisition is much lower than I expected.
You said
Um,
talent acquisition.
the cost of talent acquisition,
Right.
yes. I'll give you one very obvious example, which just happened literally yesterday. So we have been interviewing this very brilliant AI research scientist who is a fresh PhD graduate of Waseda University, and he has a lot of experiences in the intersection of diffusion models and anime research. And this is exactly the type of talents we're looking for as a startup that is training our own anime image foundation model. And when we talked about compensation, he benchmarked his expected compensation package to his experience of doing part-time job in a local 7-Eleven convenience store. And he basically proposed double of that salary, which roughly translates to about I think 15K dollars per month. Uh, Please note this is like a generative AI researcher, a PhD. He is asking for 15K, uh, sorry, 15K hundred, not 15K thousand. So that's literally like 1.5K dollars. So that's no way comparable to the average compensation of a CS PhD graduate from like Stanford or Berkeley in the Bay Area. We can literally hire 100 scientists using the same budget for hiring one scientist in the Bay Area. So I think that's what really surprised the whole team. Like a lot of times when we hear the expected compensation number, we have to double check because it just sounds incredible.
So what did you find out about the Japan market for the kind of media content that you're generating by AI? Did you find that it's a very receptive market, or what's it like there?
Well, I would say the answer to this question is both yes and no. I would say it's yes. In fact, it's yes, but it's no if you just look at the surface, right? So, Japan is sort of like a high trust society, and people value consensus over efficiency. And as a result of that, big corporates are very afraid of like sort of like sort of like being involved in reputational risk or like public affairs. So many of the big corporates would deny the use of AI publicly, but
Yeah.
secretly they are all experimenting with AI because apparently the management team they are not stupid. They could realize AI would be the future. If they don't embrace it, they would be disrupted by startups. So that makes it very interesting that if you look at the social media in Japanese, you'll see a bunch of anti-AI folks re sort of like literally raging over AI content. But if you look at the real adoption and the revenue generated in this sector, usually Japan is one of the largest markets, if not the single largest market, even for many AI startups in the US.
Okay, thanks. Yo-Yo, tell me a little bit about Maker's Fund. It's Japan-based, yen-denominated fund?
Actually, it's a global fund. So
Okay.
I'm located in Singapore. So our
Oh, okay.
yeah, so our headquarters in Singapore. But to be honest, I think the members of our fund are located in US, Europe, Asia. We have 12 people and we work across the world. But I was previously spent a lot of time in Japan and also kind of like covering like the deals and also the cases in Asia. But maybe I can say like Makers is one of the few like the venture capital who both invest in like the Western market and also the Eastern market. And maybe I can be confident to say that we are one of the few that understand both market.
Okay, so I'm going to use this as an opportunity to pick up Raphael's question from Zoom, where he asked you to contrast Japanese VCs. Are they different from the VCs around here in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I think it's a very obvious, how to say, observations from if from the people if you are both involved in like the Silicon Valley VC ecosystem, also the Japan VC ecosystem. So you can see it very, you can maybe conclude it very simply said, first of all, the Japan, like individual, independent VC in Japan is less aggressive than US and also than I think other maybe regions in the world. And also corporate VCs are very active in Japan, which is, I think is very unique phenomenon like around the world because the corporate are the ones who have the money, the resources, and all the reputations in the Japan market. And it's a single market, right? So I think first of all, like I mentioned, the independent VCs they are less aggressive, and corporate VC are more active. And the second, I think people will also simply conclude that the talents in Japan they are less aggressive than the people in US. And in US, it's like everybody is talking about like we are start the new company. But in Japan, like if you are hearing somebody tell you like in their during their like the university life, they said, "Oh, I'm starting a company," and then you have to take it very seriously because he or she is actually take a lot of risk to do that.
Yeah.
So on the kind of in the sort of gaming world and media world, here, you've got the giants like Electronic Arts. Then you have an awful lot of independent, developers. And my sense is it's kind of hard to get money if you're trying to, be in that space, if you're starting a company. Is Japan more friendly to, people starting a company in the game or in the media space?
I think because I have worked in both like the entertainment and also the more like general industry like uh electronics and others. So I should say it's comparatively easier to start a new company in entertainment and gaming than the other industry in Japan. Because first of all, I think for if you are working like say if you are working like a semiconductor or you are working in materials and the electronics, you want to start a new company in Japan, I feel it's almost like you are picking up like the most difficult way because you are competing with like the big corporate and all the even like the researcher in the university all the time. And also the funding, like I said, like the funding environment is like not that I think active than the US. So US, if you are starting even you are studying like a hardware or high tech like the startup, you also get a lot of VC can fund you. But in Japan, it's difficult. But why I say like the gaming and interactive entertainment is easier because I think one of the most important things matters in this industry is the creativity and also the human. Previously, I talk a lot about like difficulties in starting a new company in Japan. So which means if you are going to start a new company in Japan, especially in the creativities, you are much, much more, I think you can say suffered from the society, which means you are very unique. And also you already made up your mind to start like your unique things. And I think that's kind of different with like the other ecosystem about starting a company is the trendy things. In Japan, like if you are doing a games or doing you want to be a VTuber, which means first of all, you are really like this, you really have the passion. And second, you are definitely talented in this area. So I think from this point of view, as a VC, I'm very optimistic about the talents in Japan in the gaming and the interactive entertainment.
Okay, thank you. Shiho, I'd like to ask you to speak about your experiences with Shibuya Startups KK, attracting, overseas, meaning not in Japan, startups and entrepreneurs to, develop in the Japan market. How has that worked out?
Yeah, so when I first got this job, I was allowed to do anything. So what I started thinking about is what should be the KPI? And in my mind, we want to create a group of founders who are based in Japan that are global caliber. And I started thinking which areas should we invest in or focus on? And anime was just a natural fit. VTubers, of course, it's becoming like an established industry. And it was just starting in Japan and spreading global. So that was like a natural sort of strategic decision that I made. And Shibuya particularly, we're known for entertainment industry. We have a lot of companies based in Shibuya. Bandai Namco has a lot of buildings, and it's spread across. But then again, one of the buildings was in fact in Shibuya. A lot of sort of IP companies are based in Shibuya. So there was that credibility. It's a little bit like my branding strategic hat that I put on to think what should be sort of like headliner for Shibuya. So and that vertical, I think we're really good at supporting founders in that vertical.
So the companies you've been able to manage to get to go to Japan, what are the main things that they want? What is the hook that you're able to use to get them to go there?
I think, our program is really unique in the sense that it is semi-public sector and semi-private sector. So we got to flex sort of like a public sector support in assisting startup founder visa. And Shibuya, in fact, is a special economic zone. So that credibility and the resources around like whether it's a visa or bank account setup, it's very difficult if you don't have Japanese passport. You have to be a citizen of Japan. And if you don't have that, then it could take up to 1 month. And I'm just talking about the personal bank accounts, not even the corporate, right? So
you have to have an address to get a bank account. You have to have a bank account to get an address. You have to have a citizen number in order to get a bank account. And so, yeah.
Basically, you shouldn't have a bank account if you're not Japanese, or like it is really a systematic issue. So we were able to sort of talk to a lot of founders who wanted to come to Japan and learn from them what their pain points were. Bank account was a huge one that wasn't really necessarily intuitive to us Japanese. And we have Mizuho Bank as our partner bank, and we try to make it as easy as possible. We need to hear from Raven on this, but like we say, it's like the fastest you can get your bank account, corporate bank account, is like 2 weeks. And other things are illegal, and accounting could be really difficult in the Japanese language, the language that you don't know comes in. So we support those, all these things, like we call it smooth landing, anything and everything that you need in Japan to.
But most of that's the process of if you're going to go to Japan. What is it about the Japan market? Raven mentioned really low cost of labor acquisition, right? But what are the things that companies are interested in doing, are interested in Japan?
Can you repeat that again? Sorry.
Yeah, what are the startup companies, why do they care about Japan at all?
I mean, Japan, I mentioned all the things on the slide, right? That was like a laundry list of.
World's largest economy.
Yeah. And it's like blue ocean, and I think we're really strong in entertainment vertical IP. So all these things combined, and especially right now, we're seeing a lot of applications from around the world, really, wanting to move to Japan. And that includes founders and investors. And I think even Japanese yen is like weak right now, and that attract a lot of investors, and not necessarily those ones who like it's a great time to invest in Japan for investors.
Yeah.
And that sort of like what do you call it? That brings like a lot of founders into Japan. So that sort of like traction that we're strategically intended 5 years ago is now happening. So it's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's good to see you've seen a change in 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So this will take care of Chris's question on Zoom. There have been some changes in immigration law in Japan. And has that affected the kind of founder's visa that Shibuya can sponsor? Has it impacted the ability of Shibuya startup support to attract entrepreneurs from overseas?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the right person to address this
No,
to.
it's not a legal discussion.
Yeah. But I think from what I've been hearing from my teammates on the Shibuya side or on the ground, I've been away from the on the ground execution stuff for a while, but it is affecting our community to some extent.
Mhm.
But we try to economic zone, and we are sort of having this conversation with the right people and the right places to sort of this substantial process for the people that matter. So
Okay.
that's all I can say.
So what do you think, what do you have like a deadline for companies to stop receiving Shibuya support, the Shibuya startup support? That it's only 18 months or 24 months, or how long can you work with a company?
Evergreen.
Okay,
It's evergreen because
Okay.
we see this as a community of founders. We
yeah,
want to build together. So it's a membership, lifetime membership. And so
okay. So Raven, what are the kind of plans that you have? You're located in Japan, you've moved your family into Japan. I'm guessing you plan to stay there for a while. Is it a good place to grow the company?
Oh yeah, I'm actually in the process of obtaining a permanent residency in Japan right now, so I definitely plan to stay a lot longer here. And with regard to the last question, yes, I think it's definitely a good place to grow the company. So just as a matter of fact, we already raised over $100 million. So I would say we are more on the growth stage, and we are quickly expanding our team members who are physically based in Japan. Like last year, we only had about 10, and this year we already grew to about 30, and we just moved into a new office that could house up to 70. And we are not only recruiting local talents from the top universities, we are also relocating global talents who are passionate about the anime culture. For example, like we recently recruited one Canadian engineer. He's in the process of obtaining his visa to Japan. But the reason why he wanted to move is because he has been a huge fan of the anime subculture. He used to work at a big tech in the US, but he's sort of like bored of his life in the Bay Area, and he decided to move to Japan to experience something new. And he took a huge pay cut in order to come to Japan because the average compensation level is unfortunately not very comparable to the compensation package he would usually get at a big tech in the Bay Area. And I think that's sort of like the uniqueness of building in Japan. You would be able to attract a lot of great talents, not only local talents, but also global talents who just want to come to work for you just because of where you are located at, right? I think that is sort of like similar to the magic of being in Silicon Valley, but it attracts a different group of individuals who are usually more aligned with our vision. And that is definitely a plus for us.
Yoyo Makers Fund is focused on the media and kind of entertainment sectors. How do your investments pan out? Do you have an especially large number of investments in Japan because of that kind of industry being hot there?
Yeah, I think we have historically we have more than 100 like portfolios around the world. In Asia, we have maybe 20 or 30% of that, and actually we are increasing these numbers day by day. In Japan, I think we have less than 10 like the portfolios there. I think for Japan is maybe something like Shiho-san mentioned in the deck, actually you are competing with a lot of like corporate VCs, so
Yeah.
which make us have to be acting very strategically, like in the Japan market.
And of course, a startup that wants corporate VC money typically wants connections to the company, right? Help getting into the market or help doing something on the company's platform, right?
Yes, I think I have to say I think it's very unique, the relationship between the startups and also the corporate in Japan. I saw some question from the audience mention about like how can you like compete with the large corporate, right? Like in Japan.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think the relationship is very unique. It's like you are competing, but at the same time you're also working with them. So most of the startups like in Japan, like even at their, for example, like Series A or Series B, they already start to have like the big corporate as their client. And also the clients sometimes they do like development and maybe like co-marketing together because they kind of like have the things the other side want. So you mentioned about like the corporate help them to go to market and to win the reputation and give them like the credit to reach like the audience. But also the startup in Japan gave a very, I think, sharp understanding of for example, like the users and also the global market and how to act very quickly, especially like in non-Japan market. Because historically, I think the big Japan corporate, they built like domestic market first, and then they go to like global. They tend to go to global later. But if you are a startup in Japan, you can go global from day one, and then you come back with your knowledge, and that helps the big corporate as well. So I think the relationship very unique. It's like you compete, but you also work together.
I think that's a really good insight, and especially when you think that really this media world and gaming world is very much borderless.
Yeah, yes, I
That
definitely agree.
companies have to go fast, across borders. Do you do a lot of co-investing with these Japanese corporate investors?
Oh, yes. That's a lot. I think Raven here is especially the one of the cases that and we have a very when I was at my previous when I was at the Van Amco and I helped invested in Raven's company as a corporate VC. But Makers is also one of the independent VCs, like investors in Raven's company as well. So I kind of like serve both roles and kind of like understand like the different conversation with Raven from different like perspective.
So I'm kind of, getting sort of into the process of the VC business. Do you find that co-investing with Japanese VCs leads to different patterns of due diligence or kind of things that you might not think about if you don't know Japan?
Yeah, I think Raven maybe also have some experience to share as a founder. From the investor side, I do think like in Japan, I think maybe Raven mentioned this earlier. The big corporate like they pay a lot of attention about like the trust and also the reputation.
Yeah.
Which means like they spend longer time in the due diligence about the people, the company, and if you have done anything, not maybe go against even sometimes go against their values, and which maybe you may not see it very common like in other regions, right? The other regions, like sometimes if you are unique and if your business is good and if you can make money, to be honest, I think most of the VC will sign a check. But in Japan, I think trust is very important. And also I think they want to find the people, the big corporate as a big corporate, they want to find the people who work with them like in line with their values. And that is something like I think is not very common to see like in the VC's due diligence.
Okay. So Raven, Yo-Yo kind of set you up. How does things work with investor relations from your perspective?
I would say because we have a lot of investors from the Bay Area, and we also have quite a few from Japan. The approaches they take to go through their internal investment process and to follow up post investment, I would say are both very different. So, for example, in the due diligence process, I think the US VCs will be more interested in questions like what's your vision? Why are you the right fit to build this? Why are you building this right now? And something like that. In contrast, the Japanese VCs will be more interested in question like what's the financial projection for like 3 years from now? This is partially because of how IPO actually works in Japan. So just in case some of the audience here is not very familiar with the stock market in Japan, you can literally go public at slightly under $100 million in valuation. So that's a very low bar. That's why a lot of VCs they ask you for your 3 year financial projection because that's exactly what's required to go through the IPO process in Japan. So as a part of that, I think they are more interested in getting to know your financials than your strategic business plan, which is not necessarily a bad thing. And when it comes to how they follow up post investment, I think many of the Japanese investors they're very my personal take is that they're less aggressive and they're more like thinking of ways that they could help and such. And the US investors will be more aggressive on, hey, like, what's the growth target for this quarter? Did we hit it? Are we gonna 5x our revenue this year or something like that, which is very different from the expectation from a Japanese VC who wouldn't really expect you to 5x your business in a year or something.
Yeah. Shiho, the Japanese government stated a goal to increase the amount of venture capital in Japan 10 times during the 5 year period that ends in 2027. Are you seeing differences as a result of, kind of massive amounts of money flowing into venture capital?
I definitely do. As I mentioned, it feels as if I don't have numbers to back it up. With so many VCs, so much money, so much investment, that is not really matched by the numbers of founders. So that's why I think if you're building something great, you should head to Japan and raise. There's that gap and opportunity. And I think Japan, I was going to say, going back to your question, I was Reagan and Yoyo are speaking. Japan is really facing this critical time right now, and Japanese government knows it. So Japan has historically been a series of challenges followed by innovation. About like the World War II, right? In 1945, Japan in ruins, and then within 2 decades, Japan became the biggest economy in the world. No, number 2 in the world in 2 decades. And then that's because we had like Honda, Kaizen philosophy, and really set the standard for the global manufacturing industry. And then again, like oil shock, American automakers were like gone, and Japanese cars took over. And then what else, like bubble economy years. And this is around the time I was born, right? No, not really. I was born in 81, but then I still remember bubble burst. And then that's like the lost decades. And then that's when like great people who are like Pokemon came out of that era. And Pokemon, what else? Naruto, Aibo, the
dog.
The dog.
The robot dog.
Yeah. And so many great things came out of that lost decade, the vacuum, right? And now, and also like earthquakes.
My favorite's virtual pets.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Tamagotchi.
Oh, yeah. That came out of that sort of like a dead lost decades.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I lived that lost decades, and that's all I know, to be honest with you. Coming out of school, even out of Stanford, I felt like I didn't have a lot of job opportunities.
Yeah.
So I feel like Japan is facing, and the earthquakes as well, again, gave birth to a lot of like AI innovation startups tracking like disaster or SNS really filtering that to find family members aftermath, like water recycling, things that scale to other other countries. So I think right now Japan is like faced with this challenge, shrinking economy, shrinking population, birth rate is like 1.2. We're not replacing this, right? Shrinking, like country shrinking. And the workforce, something like 20% of Japanese workers will be gone in like 10 years. Like, don't quote me on this, like by 2040 or something, which is like really alarming. And living in Japan, I feel like this desperation is really catching up to our reality. So I feel like right now is a time when people like Raven come to Japan and kind of like start something new. And also speaking of like VTubers and anime, seniors like senior people over 85. The eldest one is like 100 years old, turning into VTubers to stay connected with the society.
Yeah.
And then making money. And then we have like avatars doing like cashier job at convenience stores. And behind that, there are people who did not be able to work, people who live in like remote areas, people who are disabled. They're working because of avatar or bots serving food, taking orders. That's done by, there was a company, I forgot the name of it, but ASL.
ALS.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or remotely controlling those bots. So all these innovations are sort of like entertainment, but it's more than that. So I feel like right now, Japanese government, you mentioned increased investment in innovations. Yes, I do see it. Sorry, it's a long speech for your question, but yes, I do see it and I feel it.
Okay.
And what I want to fix or work on through this company, Shibuya Startups KK, is really building bridge between like filling the gap between the amount of investment and preparation that the Japanese government and we've been doing, and then seeing someone like Raven moving to Japan, that's great, and we want to do more of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have one more kind of big topic in my objective for today, and that's the impact of AI on the media and entertainment world. And then we'll open the floor to questions from the audience here. But I gotta say, Sylvia has asked just the perfect set of questions to get into this topic. She writes, anime historically has a complex track record with the hypersexualization and stereotyping of women. Now with AIGC, these AI-generated characters, models naturally tend to amplify the biases present in their training data. As a fellow woman founder, I'm super curious to hear how each of the panelists approaches this challenge from your unique position in the industry. So, Raven, what specific actions is PixAI taking to improve the current situation with your models and product?
Okay. I'll talk about my personal perspective first, and then I'll talk about the measures we take to sort of like combat situation like this. So first of all, I would say let's not look at this from like 100% Western lens because that would be cultural appropriation, right? So if you look at the history of anime, actually, I would say the Japanese creators they took a very different approach when they think about creativity in the virtual world, right? I think that's how the Western audience could deviate from how the Japanese creators actually think about. I wouldn't call it sexualization, by the way. I would say freedom of expression in the anime space. In Japanese, it's called hyogen no jiyu. And personally, I'm pro freedom of expression, of course. No, but apparently, we need to draw a line between, like safe for work content and not safe for work content, right? So the approach we take at PixAI is that we actually go through 3 layers of moderation. So at layer 1, we actually call moderation API from OpenAI to go through like an LLM check. And then we have like a textual layer detection model that we train in-house to detect like very unique keywords that is anime specific, that is out of domain for the OpenAI detection model. And then last but not least, we have like image classifier that we trained to detect, like those NSFW attempts. And yeah, that's how we counter such, like I say, not safe for work generation. But I would say overall, the anime culture itself is more representative of the ideals that someone can freely express whatever he or she wants to express in the virtual world. And I'll try to be very careful not to confuse that with like, um, photorealistic generation, and also, like what is allowed in the real world and such.
Okay, quick follow-up question. So depending on different cultures and different legal environments, you get totally different standards of what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. Does AI help to make sure that what is created can be used in different markets?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question, and that's exactly the challenge we are facing as of now. And to be fair, we have like different level of moderation filters placed in different countries depending on the local legislation. But I think what is tricky here is that because of the training data you put into the model, sometimes you can only do those protection post generation. And if you sort of like have the protection filter only turned on post generation, there's always a risk of like of missing it, right? Either like blocking the OK content um, or like or like failing to block the wrong content. So I think that's sort of like a challenge all of the multimodality AI companies are facing right now. I don't think there's a clear answer to that yet, and I'm very curious about like how regulations across different countries would evolve after this.
Okay, thank you. So Shiho, Sylvia continues her question for you. As a woman leading and shaping the startup ecosystem, how do you structurally encourage the next generation of founders to build more inclusive, either AI-generated characters or entertainment companies? What does the startup landscape look like for female founders in Japan? So the whole question of inclusivity.
So 2 questions, right?
Yeah, one is about the AI, the entertainment industry specific, and the other is really just founders.
Yeah, so to address the first question, I think the world is quickly changing. 1 generation ago, certain things were super normal. So Raven and I had a whole chat about this, right? Before coming here, what's appropriate, what's not. And then we were sort of comparing our notes on like what we used to watch growing up. The stuff that I got exposed to like in the 80s, it was on public television channel. These are unthinkable today.
Yeah.
So these are constantly good discussion to have. And I think as long as we're sort of, we should keep on asking this question, but it's really nuanced and dynamic. So that is that. I'm not sure if I'm answering anything here. But it's good to sort of like discuss that. And the second question about
Women founders
in Japan, definitely we're not doing any better than other countries and less underrepresented. And first of all, new business formation rate in Japan is super low. That's why it's not the first choice for people who are graduating from Tokyo University. As Yoyo mentioned, I think the percentage actually is below 5%. And compared to other Western countries, developed countries, it's less than half.
Yeah.
So not so many people are starting businesses in the first place, and women are not starting businesses. And there aren't many. I think Yoyo is a great role model for many of us, because she's one of the few female venture capitalists are still like an emerging thing, right, Yoyo? Like, I don't really know the stat, but so
I think here in the Valley, it's 8% still.
okay, yeah. So Japan, I would assume it's like a lower. Just imagining. I usually walk into a room full of male investors. Usually, it's really so that, I mean, kudos to this stage. We have numbering women versus men, so it's really like a better stage.
So Yo-Yo, I want to broaden Sylvia's question a little bit for you. From an investor's perspective, how do you balance the drive for profit with ethical responsibility when you're evaluating AI?
I think different investor, they may have different answers about this, but from my personal perspective, I really don't see like the profit and also like the ethical responsibilities, they're at the offside position, because
So it's
if
not
you
zero sum. You can get both.
yeah, because in Asia, especially like if you are a product, like I mentioned, like in Japan, like you value the trust, and also you value a lot of things, like you want people in line with you doing the business in game and entertainment, because it's about like the consent, it's about copyrights, it's about the creators, it's about like the user safety. So in Asia, I think it's very sensitive to protect like the people like in the industry and protect your players or your users. So which I think sometimes when, for example, like the audience mentions some of maybe the AI products, they can be very, in a gray zone, they can grow very fast. But as an investor, we see these products usually they can go faster in the short term. But I think usually you create a very significant long-term risk for the business. So as an investor, I see these questions more like not as a value question. It's more about like the durability. It's about if the business can be sustainable. Because once you want to build a sustainable business in Asia and AIGC and also gaming and content, you have to build on a very responsible, like for example, like your data foundations. And is it transparent? And how do you generate your content? And how do you think about like the creators in the communities? If you are, I can dig this into more about like the Asia ecosystem. If you are really a fan in the Asia, like the AIGC community, like how sensitive the players and the users will get, like when they talk about like the content. So I think if you are building this kind of AIGC product in Asia, where like the creator ecosystem can be very community driven and very cultural sensitive. And in that sense, I think trust is not just a side issue. I think it's part of the product itself. So I'm not saying like every company has to solve this, like every ethical questions from the beginning. But I think if you want to build a sustainable business, you have to think about this like from day one. Like how do you care about like to protect like the people in this? I think during our answers about this, and also the question to Shiho-san about like the female protections, as a female investors, I think Raven also know that I'm a huge fan for the Otome game, which I can explain. It's female-oriented games. If you think about like the most profit, like commercially profit Otome games, actually come from Asia. So now, like this type of the Otome games, like the female games, they made more than $1 billion per year. And it's actually from the Asia, which you think maybe have a lot of issue, but actually the females in Asia, they are creating the most both like the profitable and also like the innovative, like the games for the females. And I'm very happy to be part of this journey. I invest these companies as myself as well. And as Shiho-san mentioned, like in the venture capital world, the female are still a few, not like the of course we are not the majority, but I do think like we can see this growing, and not only from like the value standard point, but also from like the commercial side.
Okay, thank you. So our audience here in the auditorium has been very patient. Go ahead.
K-pop and K-drama has taken over the world, and you can find some rules early imitated from Japan. So what did the Korean do right that would be able to have this business success? What infrastructure or be able to let them do that?
Would you want to take that one?
Yeah, well, I know as much as everyone in this room probably knows, but the government had a huge role in it, right? When we look at that model as Shibuya City, maybe we have, maybe they have. I'm not part of the city government, but I think government investing a lot in that one vertical. So that was like decision that they made during the time of financial crisis. During the time, they sort of like pivot the strategy. Yeah, I feel like, yeah.
So can I comment on this a little bit? Because basically the Japanese industry around pop music was slow to move to online distribution, and K-pop moved into Spotify early. So there was really a sense of global expansion that is maybe more aggressive in Korea because it's a smaller domestic economy. And I think if you've got an economy the size of Japan's, it's kind of dangerous because you get comfortable at home. Great question. Other questions? Go ahead.
So Raven has touched a little bit about IPO, and I would like to know about what do you see Japan as a market for the exit, maybe from where to down.
Yeah, Raven, that's for you. What are your options for exit? Do you plan to IPO? If you do, will you IPO in Japan, or what will you do?
We're definitely open to all of the different options, and I can elaborate a bit more on how IPO works in Japan. So basically, you have to submit your 3-year plan to the equivalent of SEC in Japan. I can't remember the name in English, but you can consider it to be the Japanese version of SEC. And each year, they would send inspectors to your company to check whether you are compliant with all of the regulations, are some of your employees working overtime and something like that. They're very strict on compliance, and you have to make sure you hit the financial projection for 3 years. So you can't surpass it too much, and you can't miss it too much. It must be within like a reasonable range of your projection. That's why Japanese investors value financial projections a lot, because it literally has a lot to do with whether you can go public in Japan. So I would say the bar is not very high, but it's also sort of challenging when you are like growing at like a rather faster rate. So you'd fail at the IPO attempt. Say if you projected your growth to be 2x and you ended up growing 10x, which can be very counterintuitive for the US folks, but that's like how it actually works in Japan. I think going forward in the near future, maybe this will be addressed when more and more like international entrepreneurs move to Japan, decide to take their startups public. But that's like the status quo for now.
Quick question for you, Raven. And this is from Zoom, but it's important.
Yeah.
How important is it for you to speak fluent Japanese in order to make your startup succeed in Japan?
That's a very good question. I can talk from both my perspective and the perspectives of some of my friends who speak literally like zero Japanese. So just as a matter of fact, I got like a full score in N1 test. So my Japanese is definitely fluent when I came to Japan. Uh, so I would say, um, at least in Tokyo, I can't really speak for like other cities like Osaka, but I think in Tokyo, it's perfectly fine if you speak zero Japanese, as long as your English is fluent. You would always be able to find spots for food, and also you'll be able to hang out with a group of we call it gaijins here, which literally translates into foreigners, for fun. And it's also possible to exclusively recruit English-speaking talents in Japan. There are a few very good recruitment websites that we use, for example, like Tokyo Dev and Japan Dev. And there will also be like foreigners who want to relocate to Japan who actively post their resumes on those platforms. So you don't really need to worry about it if you don't speak Japanese, as long as you are 100% sure what you are building does have a strong synergy with Japan, either with the local market or with like the say local brands or the local supply chain. So just as a matter of fact, before we moved, we used to be located in on the sixth floor of a small office near Shibuya, and I think our neighbor on the third floor, they are like a group of Stripe veterans who were originally from the US, and they somehow decided to build AI analytics startups here in Shibuya in Tokyo, and they seem to be thriving pretty well. They seem to be really enjoying their lives here. So I would say that's not really like a problem if you are 100% clear about like what you want to build in Japan. But being
Okay,
able to speak Japanese would definitely be a plus.
okay, thank you. I saw your hand. Is anybody else waiting to ask a question? We have several. We may not be able to get to everyone all the time. I saw you first.
I have two questions for Raven. I have an AI anime startup that I just launched. I'm using Tsubaki 2 for the style and pose generation for social
Oh,
media.
really? Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So my first question is, outside of the D&D community, can you talk about how you got your first organic paying customers? Because especially in 2023, the image models weren't as good as they are now. And also, second question would be, looking at comments on Pixiv and Twitter about AI art, they're not always positive. You said the money is there even if the public sentiment isn't, but as someone that cares about anime a lot, I'm wondering if you can share how you deal with those types of comments and feedback on like an emotional level.
Okay, yeah, I didn't expect to meet someone who actually uses our API here, but yeah, happy to address the question. So, number one, yeah, in the early days, I would say the most aggressive adopters of anime AI back then were those indie game developers and the webtoon studios. So it might be a little bit counterintuitive because what came up in your mind might be like the AI enthusiast, but that's actually not the case. So the webtoon studios have been long sort of like concerned with their cost of production, and I think they were one of the very early adopters of AI into their production workflow. That's partially because of how the production of webtoon is totally different from manga, which exclusively relies on the main manga artist for his passion and his hours of work, usually very long, usually 24/7. And a webtoon is more like it's like a traditional corporate structure. Like one person is reliable for drawing the POC, and others like for character design. So it's naturally just easier to blend the AI workflow into the structure and replace a part of the repetitive and tedious work that he used to outsource to a random guy in Southeast Asia or somewhere. So that was like among the first group of like heavy adopters and heavy paid users. And sorry, what's your second question again?
Second question is like, if you look at the comments on Pixiv and Twitter about AI art, they're not like, some people are critical of it. And even if like the money is flowing in, I'm wondering like, because like,
Yeah, how do you address public opinion?
I would
Oh
assume that
yeah,
Negative.
people that like
yeah.
are building in this space care about anime a lot, right? So I'm wondering like, how do you handle those types of comments on an emotional level?
So from our perspective, we usually just like we just ignore it, right? And I can tell you why. So if you look at all of the anti-AI comments, they usually come from a really small number of spam accounts who are almost religious about like anti-AI, right? It's impossible to convince those folks. And actually, in Japan, I think the industry experienced something similar when the artists transitioned from hand drawing to digital drawing, right? So there was a religious, literally, I would call them religious group of artists who strongly believed that if you don't draw by hand, the painting you produce has no soul, right? So that group of religious people, they have literally perished over time, right? Because it doesn't make sense. Everyone is drawing on digital pad. Like if you draw by hand right now, it's more like a hobby rather than something to distinguish whether your art has soul or not, right? So I think similar things would just naturally happen for AI. Eventually, the artist would just end up realizing like AI itself is like a magical pen, right? It's just like a more powerful digital pad, and you have to use it in order to catch up with the production efficiency. And we are seeing more and more of that from the industry, including like manga artists, webtoon studios, anime studios, and also indie game developers, and also even like big gaming companies and artists inside those companies, right? So I think the industry is already quickly adopting, and those who are still sort of like voicing against it, they're more like individuals who just do it for, I don't really know, like I don't think they do it for their personal benefits. They probably just do it for fun. They just like enjoy trash talking people.
Thank you.
So on that note, I'm afraid that we're out of time for the main session of the program. For students, please don't forget to write the course evaluation. For everybody, we've got some refreshments outside and we can continue our discussion. You can ask the questions we couldn't ask now outside to Shiho at least. And please join me in thanking our three great panelists for a really informative session. Thank you.